This is NDTV, and you're watching Classics.
Welcome to Big Fish. Today we have someone with us who's heading a telecom company in US. But this telecom company is a little different from what we understand as telecom companies in India. To explain more about what his business is, we have James Taiclet, the person who heads American Tower Company, one of the biggest tower companies of USA. James, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Arijit.
James, firstly, can you just take us to what is a tower company and how does it operate in the US?
A tower company in the U.S. typically owns a set of assets, tower assets, ground-based towers predominantly, and our goal is to lease those assets. In our case, we have 20,000 in the U.S., to as many of our carrier customers as we can locate on that tower. That business is called co-location, and that's our primary business. We also will build towers on a selective basis for our customers, and over the course of the last few years, we've built 8,000 towers of the total of 22,500 that we have. That 22,500 is divided into the U.S., which I said was about 20,000. In Mexico and Brazil, we have an international business with about 2,500 total.
In India, of course, the telecom companies have been setting up towers for quite some time, but they never realized it to be a huge business opportunity. But now things have changed. They are looking at it as a big business opportunity. So where does American Tower Company now come into play when it comes to Indian tower companies as well as telecom companies in India who have set up huge tower infrastructure?
Our strategic goal in entering this market is to create the neutral manager model for towers. In other words, to be a non-carrier, sizable owner of tower assets where we can create a liquid market of this co-location so that based on commercial contracts and agreements, carriers can begin to more fluidly go on shared towers. And we think that's a better model ultimately as it's played out in the U.S. than either carriers building their own towers or even sharing on a barter basis, because you don't really have a liquid market there. You end up with too many towers, not enough sharing, and we think that our role in India can be the neutral manager for some set of towers. We'd love to see at the end of the day as big a business and number of towers as we have in the U.S., if that can be accomplished. And that is our goal.
How do you plan to enter the Indian market? Are you looking at buying out equity in some of the tower companies which these telecom companies have hived up and created as separate subsidiaries? Or are you looking at setting up towers and creating your own infrastructure?
We've got all of the options in front of us. We're prepared to build towers, investing our capital in the country to build new sites. We're also open to looking at existing tower companies on an acquisition basis potentially. And we're also especially interested in partnering with the carriers. And partnering can mean a lot of things. It can mean a traditional sale leaseback. In other words, the carrier, the wireless operator, sells us many or all of their towers. They lease them back on a monthly basis. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to joint venture with a carrier, and that carrier could own a proportion of the asset base. And we would manage it, again, on this neutral basis for others to use. A third way could be that we would have a management company, sort of an umbrella over all of these types of joint ventures and subsidiaries and built towers, where we might not even own any percentage of some of the towers that we're helping to market and manage. So we're keeping our options wide open. We don't feel we know enough to know exactly the right answer yet in India. So we're keeping our open mind, and we're having lots of discussions with numerous parties to figure out how we can be the most helpful in India.
Even though, of course, active infrastructure is not allowed at present, tower sharing is allowed, and that's something which the government is trying to encourage. Now, Reliance Communications has openly said that they are willing to sell a certain stake in their tower company to international bidders, who could be either tower companies who operate globally or other investors. So is American Tower Company looking at buying out equity in Reliance Communications Tower Company?
We don't speak to individual negotiations that may or may not be going on with our customers because we want to respect their privacy. But I can tell you that we've had introductory meetings with essentially all of the carriers, either the shareholders or the management in India today. And we also have made a trip to Southeast Asia, which we will also be interested in looking into opportunities there. So again, we're coming at the market with an open mind. We know that there are some transactions that have already been accomplished and others that have been spoken about. We will come and evaluate each of those and see if there's a role for us to play.
What about valuations of Indian tower companies? Reliance recently sold 5% equity in its tower company at a huge amount of valuation, almost $6.75 billion. So, do you think that that is the sort of valuation which Indian tower companies will get in the future as well, or are you expecting the valuations to go up further, or do you think that they are overvalued?
It's too soon for us to make that kind of pronouncement. There were obviously some investors who felt that that 5% stake was fairly valued and therefore entered that transaction. I think we just need to see how it plays out.
As you said, you've come with an open mind. You're looking at various business models. So, what is the let's say the primary model which you're going to push forward in this country, which suits the business model of American tower company as well?
Well, our primary goal again will be to set up this co-location shared model where we can act as the facilitator and the neutral manager of a large set of towers. So that's our initial goal, is to establish the co-location process and a strong environment for co-location in this country. In the U.S., again, as an example, every carrier's first priority for a new cell site to be deployed, for new service to be brought, is to co-locate on an existing tower. And often it's on one of ours. That's the first priority. In India today, the rollout is so quick and so rapid. Most carriers have, I think, correctly decided at this point in time they need to control and manage that build out. They're building mostly their own towers. There is some sharing, as I said, but there really is no neutral manager, no broad broker that can say, look, on a commercial basis, on cash rentals, if you will, we'll have a wide open liquid market. That's our main goal. And then underneath that umbrella, we would like to work with certain carriers to figure out, is there a subsidiary that we can create, or two or three or four, where we own some, all, or perhaps even none of the sites, but we do manage them. Okay. That's our strategic goal.
So what sort of an investment would your plans require in India? You know, what sort of investment is American tower company looking at, let's say, this fiscal, next fiscal, or over the next 2 to 3 years?
Well, obviously it depends on our success in purchasing or joint venturing with assets. But just to give you some perspective, we have got a $23 billion enterprise value in the United States. We've got fairly low financial leverage for a company of our type, and therefore we have access to financial markets, which we can then bring to bear in India and Asia. So really there's nothing off the table. I would hope it's a substantial opportunity for us over the next couple or 3 years, and we're very eager to get started.
Jim, of course, now that you're in India, by when can we expect an announcement of a tie-up with either a carrier or with independent tower, company which sets up towers with American tower company?
Well, we'd hope to have our first interactions with our carrier customers come to fruition in the next 6 to 12 months. These are complex transactions, and as you know, the Indian market itself is moving and fluid. So we don't have an overly aggressive timeline to get something done. We want to get the right transactions done. We know it may take some patience on our part. We're not going to come into India and say we know everything. We're going to come in and learn about the market, build relationships with the carriers, demonstrate that we think we can add value, and then the transactions we hope will come.
Any limit on the amount of money which you're willing to invest in the country? If you can just give us a ballpark figure, what sort of investment would be coming in?
We will invest whatever is required to make our risk-adjusted return goal. So I'll just give you a couple of examples. In Mexico, we were able to find opportunities to invest hundreds of millions of dollars. In Brazil, also around between $50 and $100 million. We'd like to end up, eventually in India with even a greater investment than those. So, without putting a number on it, we're eager to do this. I've spent 2 weeks in the region myself to really learn about it personally. And you'll also find that we're going to be naming a regional president who will be based in India in the next few weeks. That person's already identified. It's a matter of communications, and we'll get that name out, and I think it'll be a credible person in the industry. You'll see how serious we are.
Sorry. How big is the business opportunity, Jim, for American Tower Company in India?
it's fairly unlimited. One of our goals, again, could be managing 2, 3, 4 carrier sets of tower portfolios. So we could be managing on a co-location basis tens of thousands of sites. We could have ownership stakes in 5, 10, 15, we don't know how many thousand towers. Again, we're keeping an open mind. We are here because we think it's a big opportunity. If it was a small opportunity, it probably wouldn't merit the resources that we're going to put in, the management attention that we're going to put in, and the fact that we've added a new executive vice president in our company to run this region who's going to report directly to me. So we don't want to predict exactly how this is going to turn out because no one's seen that whole movie yet.
Very true.
But we do feel that it's going to be a substantial opportunity for our company.
Most of the telecom companies, of course, have hived off their tower business into separate subsidiaries. What is the amount of stake which you feel that, if you decide to take that path, what is the sort of stake, would you be looking at in these subsidiaries, which actually allows you to do the sort of business which American Tower Company would like to do?
Depending on the carrier and how many sites they have already, that could be 100%. And again, the tradition for us has been 100%. But in the U.S., when we did our sale-leaseback transactions, we were looking at regional Bell companies and other carriers that aren't quite as substantial today as the Indian carriers are in terms of number of sites. So we did 2,000 acquisition sites with Alltel, 2,000 with AT&T, about 2,000 with Verizon. Those are the size of the transactions we've done. We know in India that number could be a lot higher.
So you're saying that you would probably like to buy out the whole tower company, or would you be also willing to have certain amount of stake? Because most of the Indian companies, of course, are going to be pan-India. They are pan-India.
Right.
They've got operating licenses in almost all the 23 telecom circles.
Not only are we willing to take less than 100%, it may make sense for both the carrier and us that we take less than 100%. Especially for the bigger carriers, should we be successful and fortunate enough to have a transaction or relationship with them, the national carriers, it may make sense for everyone that we don't necessarily own every single tower in that portfolio. I think the key again, and what will benefit the telecom industry in India the most, will be that this neutral environment for co-location, what you call tower sharing, we'll call co-location because it's commercial,
Very true.
gets established. And I know that there's a study that the TRAI has done, an expectation of 330,000 towers needed. There's about 110,000 out there today. We're not sure that the country needs all 220,000 because if we can get taller towers built and we can generate this co-location type of business model, that number could be smaller, and I think that would benefit the country. It would benefit the carriers because they wouldn't have to spend as much on infrastructure, and it would benefit people because they'd have faster access, especially outside the metropolitan areas, to service.
We'll take a short break, but please don't go away. We'll be back with James Taiclet.